First order of business, we'd like to introduce Mr. Alvin Taylor, who was recently appointed to the GAB as a Rural South representative. Mr. Taylor, would you like to give us a brief bio?
Sure. My name's Alvin Taylor, as stated. I live in Meggett, what used to be very rural, still rural, but changing quickly. And I grew up in Marion County. This is where I grew up, and came to the Charleston area when I was hired with the Department of Natural Resources about 50 years ago, and have been living in the Meggett area ever since then. I worked for 43 years for the Department of Natural Resources, retired about 4 years ago as Executive Director of DNR. And one of my passions as I was the Executive Director of the Department of Natural Resources was public lands and preserving, conserving, and taking every opportunity to obtain and protect those precious pieces of South Carolina. So that's my passion, and I'm glad to be here. Look forward to working with all of you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome. Next, I think Eric and Chris have a little bit of business to tell us about.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've done a little reorganization here at Greenbelt, and there is a new department called Housing Development and Land Management. So I'm now the director of that department that essentially has two divisions, Housing Development and Greenbelt at this point in time. Chris Dubuque is being promoted to Deputy Director for Greenbelt, so he's going to be leading this meeting. He'll be increasingly taking on some of my traditional responsibilities and communicating with you all. I'll still be around to help out, but just wanted to make everyone aware of that change.
And you'll kind of do that over the course of a year, roughly? Is that what or is that the time frame?
I'll say,
or is it just kind of as
like Mr. Ant tells me, we'll let him swim, and if he needs a life raft, we'll throw one out there for him. But yes, we'll be slowly phasing in the switch over, and I'll still be around.
That's awesome. Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
All right. So how about the Freedom of Information Act?
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and furnished to all news media and persons requesting notification. And also wanted to give y'all a reminder, don't leave right after this meeting. We will be doing photos of each member individually so we can get those up on our website next to your names eventually.
Okay, very good. And if we could get an approval for the meeting notes from February 12th.
Motion to approve.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great, the motion carries. We'll now take general public comments from those who signed up on topics on the current project applications. Anyone that signed up to speak on one of the new projects being considered today will have that opportunity later in the meeting after that project is presented by staff. All public comments will be limited to 2 minutes, and please state your name and address. So this would be for anything besides current project applications. Do we have anybody? No. Okay.
We have one signed up for the Mount Pleasant Way project when we get to that one.
Okay, fantastic. How about an update on goals from Chris?
Yeah, so just a brief update on the Greenbelt goals. As you recall, last GAD meeting, Eric provided you all an overview of the Greenbelt goals, the current status of those goals, an analysis of the partner feedback we got after sending out the survey, and recommended some staff recommendations as far as reevaluating those goals moving forward. So as a reminder, these are the staff recommendations the board approved at the last meeting. We are currently on that first step. So forming a technical advisory committee and discussing the mapping opportunities and creating a geodatabase. So we have formed a technical advisory committee. We had our kickoff meeting that took place on March 14th. All the organizations you see listed there on the right-hand side had representation for that meeting. So we had all of our main land trust partners there. We had the Charleston County PRC, Charleston County Resiliency and Sustainability staff, county GIS staff, council of governments, all three major municipalities, and the East Coast Greenway Alliance. The Alliance wasn't in attendance for that meeting, but we did meet with one of the representatives shortly after that meeting, and they had expressed interest to be a part of the committee, so they'll be on board as well. So currently, we're just in the stage of collecting data sets from all of our partners. We have a shared folder where we are storing all that data, and then county GIS staff will combine that data as mapping layers, and we'll reconvene as a committee at that time to kind of look over the data that we have thus far. At the same time, we're reevaluating these goals over this next year. PRC is also updating their open space analysis. The Council of Governments is updating its walk, bike, BCD plan. And Charleston County is also receiving technical assistance from the Forestry Commission to create a custom green infrastructure plan. So that'll provide us a priority map and GIS layer to incorporate as well into this overall analysis. And then, of course, once we have something to present to you all, we'll update you. Any questions on the status of reevaluating the goals? So we will jump into the FY25 winter Greenbelt applications. So we had a total of 5 projects for your consideration, 2 rural and 3 urban. If all projects are approved, it would protect a total of 29.5 acres and 10,853 linear feet of corridor. For the rural projects, we have the Botany Bay expansion at Osceola Creek Point. Applicant is Edisto Island Open Land Trust, and that would be a fee simple acquisition of 18.2 acres. We have the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement. The applicant is Kiowa Island Natural Habitat Conservancy, and that is for the purchase of a conservation easement on 5.39 acres. It shows 2.1 there. They have had a recent survey completed since the subcommittee that added additional 3.29 acres of marsh to that overall acreage. For the urban parks, we have Coakley Chapel. This applicant is Low Country Land Trust, and this would be a fee simple acquisition of 6.5 acres. We have the Station 24 Boardwalk construction for Sullivan's Island, minor improvements only project. And then the town of Mount Pleasant applying for another segment of Mount Pleasant Way along Rifle Range from Ben Sawyer Boulevard to Venning Road. So this map just provides you kind of a regional breakdown of where all these projects are located. You have the Botany Bay expansion down there on Edisto Island, the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement just outside the urban growth boundary along Betsy Carrison there, the Sullivan's Island Boardwalk, the Mount Pleasant Way new section right here, and then the Coakley Chapel Park in the historic Hamlin Beach community. So here is a breakdown of the financial implications for the FY25 winter cycle. For the 2 rural projects, that totals $635,700. If both of those projects are approved, that would leave a balance of around $8.2 million in that allocation. For the urban funds, we have the town of Sullivan's Island requesting $29,595 for the Station 24 boardwalk construction. The funds on hand is slightly less than the amount they are asking for, so it would leave a temporary negative balance of $1,564. And this negative balance was a result of the pro rata funding for the Red Top project that was approved last cycle. That would just be a temporary negative balance until that FY26 allocation kicked in July. For the town of Mount Pleasant, they're requesting $1,073,100 for this segment of Mount Pleasant Way. Their current balance is at negative $72,357. Again, that negative balance is due to the pro rata funding for the Red Top project. So if that project is approved, it would leave a negative balance of $1.1 million roughly. And so that will require use of funds from the FY26 allocation, which is projected to be similar to the FY25 allocation, which was about $1.38 million. So they would be back out of the negative come July. Next, we have Coakley Chapel Park in the urban unincorporated. As you know, this is a depleted allocation. currently sits at negative 4.2 million. So if this project was approved for further forward spending, we'd be looking at a balance of negative 5.8 million with a lifetime of just over 1 million. The other option here, if the project is approved, is to recommend an alternative funding source or different allocation to use. The total for all urban parks is roughly 2.7 million, and if approved, would leave a balance of 1.4 million. The total for all rural and urban parks in this cycle is 3.3 million, and if all are approved, would leave a balance of 9.6 million. Any questions on the funding? Yes.
Quick one. So when you say lifetime balance, just for reference for those of us who are newer and haven't been here for a while, what is that lifetime? Like how long is that projected out?
What was the end date on that, Eric, for the lifetime?
So it's a projection of the life of the remaining 2 halfpenny sales tax, with the first halfpenny coming off in the next couple of years, and then the second halfpenny is through 2043.
Okay, that's right. Any other questions?
All right, shall we dive in? Oh, sorry, Adam.
Adam McConnell, just quick clarification on some of these that may have a negative balance. This is a kind of pay-as-you-go sort of approach. Is that, I just want to get my head clear on that. Is there any intention to bond any of this in the future if major acquisitions become available? Is that a tool that's available to this, or is that something that would be limited based upon your sort of statute?
We are pay-as-you-go currently. We did bond a portion of the first halfpenny sales tax right up front when there were a number of projects lined up. But that would certainly take a recommendation from you all to county council to then make that decision.
So there's an option if there were a major acquisition to have that may require $10 million, say, and that we didn't have it in the balance, there is an opportunity to at least approach council with that recommendation if this board agrees upon it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Right.
We can head into the FY 25 Winter Greenbelt project presentations, public comments, and GAB considerations. First project for consideration is the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement. The application for this project is Kewah Island Natural Habitat Conservancy. This property is located off Betsy Carrison Parkway and adjacent to Bohicket Creek, approximately 1 mile north of the Betsy Carrison Nature Trail phases that the board has approved in past cycles. The primary focus of this project is the preservation of natural resources and establishing a wildlife corridor along Betsy Carrison Parkway. There is an opportunity on this conservation easement for public access by invitation only for educational purposes. And the landowner has also expressed interest in virtual access through webcams as well. The draft conservation easement does prohibit any subdivision, any residential or industrial use, and any permanent buildings or structures, with the exception of a single dock, a gazebo, pergola, or pavilion, and then 2 wildlife observation platforms. And then it also does allow for other uses like walking trails, outdoor seating, viewing benches, and garden beds. So the Conservancy is requesting $38,000 towards the purchase of the easement for the 5.39 acres. Again, there was 3.9 acres of marsh added to the 2.1 acres of upland that was originally surveyed. They are also requesting $27,700 in admin closing costs. They have a 263% match, which consists of $147,000 landowner donation of the value of the easement, $25,000 from the State Conservation Bank, and $650 in admin funding. The subcommittee recommends approval of $65,700 in rural funds. The Conservancy did conduct a public survey, which showed 90% in support, 3% that opposed, and the remaining were undecided. And they have 2 letters of support that were submitted as well. Any questions regarding this project?
No.
Yes.
So it will only be available to the public by you have to reserve it unless some group is taking a tour?
Yeah, so As you recall, conservation easements don't require that public access component, but this landowner has expressed interest in allowing some public access just by invitation only. I guess special requests or any community outreach where they'd want to bring folks onto the property for educational purposes. And then also the virtual public access as well through webcams was expressed.
And I can touch on that real quick. The landowner was, I mean, it was a pretty cool. He was definitely very passionate about being able to provide this land. Hopefully, so he was thinking like educational purposes, so schools could do like field trips and things. So they're going to work towards it. But yeah, for those who weren't at the subcommittee meeting, it was really cool to see how passionate he was about conserving this land. It has a lot of history on it, and so yeah, it was very good.
Is that it? We don't have any additional information from the, I guess, who is that? The Kiowa Habitat Conservancy. At this point, there's no presentation element to this.
No, we just provide a brief overview. We do have them here if you'd like more information on that public access and what that might look like.
Does anybody have any questions about that they would like to direct to Kiowa, the Kiowa Conservancy, since we have the man here? No? Okay. Okay, thank you. In that case, do we have a motion or any follow-up here?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion around this? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Next, Chris.
Okay, next project for your consideration is the Botany Bay Expansion 2 Osella Creek Point project. The applicant is Edisto Island Open Land Trust. As the title suggests, this is expansion to the Botany Bay Heritage Preserve. So all this land you see to the left of these two parcels is preserved there. The idea here, once these properties are secured, is to transfer to DNR to incorporate into the preserve. There is easy connectivity to an existing trail system that exists in the preserve in this area to the bottom left here. And there's also connectivity opportunities to other protected Greenbelt properties nearby, including the Hutchinson House, the Edisto Island Youth Recreation Area, and most recently the Store Creek Park property off Point of Pines Road there. Also, this is a part reimbursement, part fee simple acquisition request. So this smaller parcel you see here has been purchased by the land trust, and they're seeking reimbursement on that portion. And the larger peninsula lot here, they're under contract to purchase. This is heirs property, and they do have some significant title issues to work through on that portion. The land trust is requesting $515,000 towards the purchase of 18.2 acres. They're also requesting $20,000 in admin funds and $35,000 in minor improvements. Their match is 45%, which includes $230,000 towards the land purchase and $25,000 in admin costs. And the subcommittee recommended approval of $570,000 in rural funds with the special condition that full legal access to both parcels be demonstrated with clear title prior to funds being released. Now, you all notified in advance of this meeting that the land trust has requested that that special condition only be applied to the peninsula portion, this larger portion here. The reason that special condition was applied was there is a dirt access road right here for both parcels. There was no ownership or easement found for the existing road. County Council voted to abandon any and all interest they had in this road on July 18th, 2024. And Edisto Island Land Trust obtained a quitclaim deed on this portion of the road adjacent to the parcel that they purchased. So they are requesting that the special condition only be applied to the larger lot here, as they are working through some title issues that could take some time prior to closing, as well as the roadway with that parcel. They do feel this smaller lot has its own standalone conservation values, and they being able to be reimbursed on this quickly will then allow them to turn around and use those funds for other land protection projects in the near future that they're eyeing. County staff would also recommend that any language regarding clear title would be changed to marketable title, and this was direction given by our legal department a few years back, and our ordinance was actually updated to reflect that language. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, just to be clear, so
Yes.
can you go back to the map?
Sure.
The little front rectangular property. So because of the quit claim deed, any access consideration there is resolved. Basically, it's got full access,
That's my understanding.
and therefore no point not to close it, right? Okay, so then, I think you guys have a prepared staff recommendation for this. Is that correct?
For a special condition?
Yeah, or just how to state
Okay.
the amendment to the special condition
Sure.
in addition to the marketable title piece.
Yeah, so I mean, staff would support the request because we do feel the smaller lot does hold some conservation value as a standalone project in the larger scope. And we are understanding that they would want to turn around and use those funds elsewhere. So a special condition could look something like full legal access to the peninsula lot be demonstrated with marketable title prior to the funds being released for purchase of that parcel. We could include the TMS number in that.
That sounds good. Does everybody understand that? Barbara?
I just wondered, what's the difference between marketable title and clear title?
I'll defer to our legal if they got a good answer for that.
Commission members, and that is a good question. And a simple explanation would be that clear title, there's no discrepancy into who has interest or not. It's solely in the interest of one party or one entity. Whereas marketable title, then anyone can purchase it, but then there may still be things that need to be worked out, such as heirs property issues or things of that nature. But the title can still be sold to anyone who wants to purchase the property.
Could I add to that?
Yes, please.
And I think also when we looked into this a couple of years ago with our real estate attorney, it was kind of explained to me that anytime there's an easement for a utility or drainage or even zoning, in some cases, is considered an encumbrance on that title. So marketable is a better term, and that is what we have switched to in all of our documents. That's what we require. We still would require a title policy commitment ensuring that title as well.
Is that clear? Yeah, go ahead.
Just so for clarification, if you don't mind going to the map real quick,
Sure.
Chris. Understood that we have access to the rectangular. Now, is there a portion of that peninsula that's not cut off by that road that nobody owns? So at least for access-wise, by foot, you could connect the trail currently? Is that correct?
By foot, you can connect.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more question on that. So when you explained it earlier, when the county quit claimed really it was a right-of-way, I think, it was a non, that are not, there was no tax map number to those, the old rights-of-way. Did it get abandoned to the bottom of the rectangular parcel or the whole way down into the other piece?
My understanding, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the county abandoned any interest in that whole roadway.
So wouldn't that go to both sides then?
I mean, it sounds like to me, so it looks like an old right-of-way around the rectangular parcel, but then the long piece down into the peninsula, all of that was abandoned. And so that
At least the
land was-
county's interest has
Right.
been abandoned on that.
So
that
there's still no TMS on them.
No,
Okay. There's still no ownership.
correct.
So I guess my question, just as a follow-up, and this is more to the board, is do we need to have a special condition if you can access it now by foot? I mean, is there intent on putting a road in there? Do we need to have that? Because the title needs to get resolved in order for us to release funds to that, right?
Get in here.
Correct. We would not release funds until the title issues were resolved and, a company was willing to issue a policy to cover that title. And I would also note that there is an existing roadway from Botany Bay Heritage Preserve that ends right at the property line to the peninsula lot, and there's a gate there now.
So I guess I would just ask the board, like, do we actually need a special condition, or does
At all.
Is it just good to go?
I think in order to have that discussion, we'd have to have a motion and.
Okay,
And then we can enter into a discussion on that. So you could make a motion around that. You could also ask John or Chris for any other clarifying language at this point on that, or clarifying issues on that. So you either need a motion or you need to ask these guys a direct question.
Understood.
And to provide some further clarification, and you are free to make any motion even you would like. You do not have to accept the recommendation from the subcommittee if you don't want to, although that is an option.
So I'll make a motion to approve. No special condition?
And do we have a second, Mr. Jones? Second. Okay, so we now have a motion just to approve without the special condition. Any discussion around that? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, great, motion carries.
Okay, the next project for your consideration is another segment of Mount Pleasant Way along Rifle Range from Ben Sawyer Boulevard to Venning Road. This segment will link to three other planned and funded trails. So you have the Ben Sawyer portion down here, a portion along Venning Road here, and then an extension on Rifle Range to the IOP connector. And much like all the other segments, Greenbelt funds will be used to purchase recreation easement outside of the existing right-of-way from willing sellers only. The town is requesting $485,000 towards the acquisition of easement. They're also requesting $587,500 in admin and closing costs. Their match is 214% going towards design and planned improvements for the project. And they received that funding from a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, as well as town funds as well. This subcommittee recommended approval of $1,073,100 in Town of Mount Pleasant urban funds. And as a reminder, approval will require the use of funds from the FY26 allocation, which is similar to FY25 at roughly $1.38 million. They did conduct a public survey for this project. They got 82.4% in support, 14.7% opposed, and the rest were undecided. And they also received 12 letters of support for the project. Any questions?
It seems like that admin closing cost is fairly substantial. What's the justification for that?
Yeah, that's pretty typical with all their Mount Pleasant Way segments. A lot with all the closings involved in the process. The majority of the funds are going to be used towards those admin closing costs, whereas they'll only need to acquire additional easement in certain areas.
I did want to note that I'll recuse myself from voting on this item.
Okay, we have that. Okay.
We have a public comment.
And we have a public comment, too.
Good morning, George Freeman, 1450 Bowman Road.
Good morning.
President of the Cage Organization. I spoke before the subcommittee on this item the last time they met. And I'm here today, and I provided 2 pictures to you because I'm still trying to get you to see that this is a bad idea, where you're coming in and putting a 10 to 12 foot sidewalk in the neighborhood and calling it a sidewalk. I'm showing you on there that you are purchasing Greenbelt and trees. You will be purchasing green space and trees in our community to destroy it. When the half-cent sales tax was passed, I thought when we voted for that was a mandate to purchase green space to bring into our neighborhoods, not to use the money to take green space out of our neighborhoods. I'm trying to show you on that picture that a number of trees has to be taken out if this is done which if you approve this today, I know, I've been told that you've been mandated to connect the green spaces. There is already a route that connects the green space in this area. There's only one piece that needs to be connected, and that's on Chuck Dolly Boulevard. That's all the town has to do to complete the connection for a path to connect to the green space that exists between 6 Mile and 7 Mile right now. I am pleading with you today to not disrupt a community. The person here last week said that the situation already exists with the trash cans and debris and the mailbox in our neighborhood. That is true. But if you go to a 10 to 12 feet, you will have traffic going both ways on this sidewalk like another highway. We already crowded on Rifle Range Road with vehicles now, with people cutting through to get to the other subdivisions. Now you're going to invite people to ride all the way from city of Charleston through our neighborhoods. I do not understand this. You were not assigned to destroy communities. You were assigned to bring green space and make our community more pleasant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No, I don't think so. All right, any questions for Chris? Do we have the Mount Pleasant? Anybody from Mount Pleasant? Okay, so any questions for these guys?
Yeah. What about the, as the gentleman said, that there's another way to connect on Chuck Dolly? Can you speak to that?
I'm not sure I understand specifically the connection that Mr. Freeman mentioned.
We'll come to the mic. Great. Make sure we get it all. This is Sophie Holmes with Town of Mount Pleasant.
So this, as part of the Mount Pleasant Way, the goal here is to connect neighborhoods to green spaces as well as between the planned Mount Pleasant Way segments, which includes from Ben Sawyer along Rifle Range. What are the specific green spaces that are of concern to connect?
Yes, Mr. Freeman.
There are a number of spaces along Rifle Range Road where it's very narrow with the sidewalk that we have now. In order to put in this 10 to 12 foot wide stuff, you'd have to destroy trees and green space that exists in the community right now. That is insane to me that your task with bringing green space in the community would be to come and spend money to destroy green space in our community. And the one picture that you see that's next to Ben Sawyer, you'll see you have to take out a number of trees. Yes, you have to take out a number of trees there to put this project in. If you go down Chuck Dolly from Ben Sawyer to Bowman Road, there's more than adequate space along there to put a 10-foot path along there. And I'm pretty sure a young lady could attest that Watermark, Midtown, and Hungry Neck already have multi-paths on them right now. And when the town is getting ready to connect from 6 Mile to Hamlin Road, that you will be able to ride from the foot of the bridge all the way to Portier Bluff if they connect that one piece on Chuck Dolly.
Okay, thank you.
So can you speak to that?
Yeah, a couple of things that I'll note there. Part of the goal of this project is to build redundancy so that you're not traveling half a mile from your home to get to one of those alternative paths. And additionally, in regards to some of those trees along the path, we will narrow the trail as needed to avoid historic trees, and trees will be assessed by an arborist to determine the health of the trees.
In the photograph that was provided, if those are grand oaks, let's say, are they protected anyway, or could you remove those if you wanted to? Could the town remove those if they wanted to?
So I'm not going to be able to quote directly from our tree ordinance, but the Transportation Division does have some ability when it's essential for safety reasons to mitigate those trees and remove them. However, it's definitely not in the interest of the project to remove those trees. They provide important shade, and I think the preference would be to narrow the path around those trees.
I think with that, maybe you can cite, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I know there's been parts of Mount Pleasant Way that has already done that, just for, clarification, that you guys have already worked around trees and done some like small bridge type things in certain places.
Yes, absolutely. Previous designed sections along Mathis Ferry Trail, we've used boardwalk segments and narrowed the path to protect root systems of those trees. I believe the presentation given at the previous meeting showed some of the plans for that on Mathis Ferry, which similar things could be done here.
Chris or Eric, given that we're kind of just getting going with these corridors, would it be reasonable to have a special exception or requirement that special care was given to Grand Oaks, or is that already built into this, in your opinion, or staff opinion? Or can you even say?
I don't know that we factor it into scoring or anything like that.
Right.
I mean, I know each.
We would defer to the municipality's tree policy,
Yeah,
whatever jurisdiction.
right, okay.
And I'm not familiar with Mount
I would
Pleasant.
argue that they've already demonstrated.
Could I provide some clarification?
Hold on, make that comment then.
I'm not voting on the item, but I would like to provide some clarification. This image that is shown, this particular parcel is actually in the county, so it would be subject to county regulations. The town has no intentions of removing any tree that is this significant. And I think that, as Sophie spoke to, the work that we've already done with the design of Mathis Ferry demonstrates the importance of preservation, because that is a critical part to me of open space, is to be able to provide for preservation of those trees. So I hope that answers a couple of questions, but that's actually a county parcel for information.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mount P or Chris or Eric? And if not, is there a motion? Okay, we have one motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The motion.
I opposed.
Oh, we have one opposed.
Two.
Two, excuse me. Sorry, I rushed through that. Okay.
Okay.
One recusal, two opposed. I do believe the motion still carries, correct? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Next project.
Okay. Next project for your consideration is the Station 24 Boardwalk construction in the town of Sullivan's Island. The town is continuing to use their Greenbelt funds to improve beach access in flood-prone areas. They are requesting $29,595 for this minor improvement project. This new boardwalk will be raised and possibly extended in some areas due to flood-prone areas. As you can see in that picture, there's some pieces of plywood there where it floods out frequently. And a lot of the areas of the existing boardwalk have a lot of rot. The new segment would be 6 feet wide, 620 feet long. And the subcommittee recommends approval of $29,595 in urban town of Sullivan's Island funds. Sullivan's Island has completed all previously approved Greenbelt minor improvement projects, and they also received 3 letters of support. And just a reminder on this one, if approved, they would have a slight negative balance of $1,565 until that FY26 allocation in July. Any questions?
Any questions? Any motions?
Move to approve.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next project.
Oops. Okay, the next project for your consideration is Coakley Chapel Park. The applicant is Low Country Land Trust. These properties are located in the historic Hamlin Beach community between Atlanta Drive here and Hamlin Beach Road down here. Low Country Land Trust would place a conservation easement on this property and transfer it to the Hamlin Beach Community Association to operate and manage as a passive park and community center. And Low Country Land Trust would retain ownership initially through the first phase of this project to ensure that public access gets established and that renovations occur to the historic chapel. This is a conceptual plan that was provided by Low Country Land Trust. The historic chapel is located in the front of the parcel there. Laser pointer's not working. Let's see. Towards the north part there. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. All right. Other parts of this plan would include some boardwalk, which you'll see is the dotted portion there. Some nature trails, which would be the red portion. There's a pond on the property as well that they'd use for fishing and crabbing. They'd look to add a gazebo in there for a community picnic area. Other uses could include a community garden and ecological, cultural, and historical signage as well. And there would be, you can see there's about 4 points of access for the park as well. And we're frozen. It all froze up.
It's going to reopen.
Yeah. Sorry, computer froze. Okay, sorry about that. So Low Country Land Trust, you all were notified in advance of the meeting. They did submit an updated application based off the subcommittee recommendations. So these numbers you see here are updated from the amended application. So they are requesting $1,500,000 for the purchase of 6.5 acres. That ask was decreased by $100,000. They're also requesting $14,500 in administrative costs and $100,000 in minor improvements. They've also increased their match from $385,000 to $672,500. So that went from 23% up to 42%, and that did add 3 extra points to their application for that increase in match. That match consists of $300,000 from the State Conservation Bank, $85,000 donation of value from the landowner, $100,000 of other funding towards the purchase of the land, and $187,500 towards planned improvements. The subcommittee did recommend deferral of this project over concerns of the Greenbelt ask of the match, the original match that was 23%. The availability of funds in the urban unincorporated allocation, and the overall suitability of the parcels for a public park. Again, if the GAB did vote to approve the project, this would require a funding recommendation for either further forward spending or pulling funds from a different allocation. And this project did receive 4 letters of support as well. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Is there anything that particularly distinguishes these parcels from those surrounding? I would note that you've got in the notes here, I don't know whether you saw them, inspected the property, that it has ponds and streams and suitable for fishing. I looked at Google I couldn't see any streams and identified a pond which was very small, particularly relative to 6.5 acres. And I note that there's a row of houses, a public road, and another row of houses between these parcels and the waterfront. And secondly, or thirdly, the zoning is AE and it abuts V zoning, which means that it'll be very, very expensive to develop and perhaps not economically attractive.
We did visit the site, so the pond is located towards the back of the parcel there. The applicant can speak more to access to that pond. It is fairly sizable for fishing. The rest of the property is pretty heavily vegetated, so I can't speak to the streams unless the applicant wants to address that and those other concerns.
I've got a number of other questions, but I suspect the applicant is going to talk and I'll save them for then.
Okay. Sam, would you like to address some of their concerns?
There you go. There's a specific question or?
Oh, you want
Can you tell us who you are and where you're?
Yeah, I'm Sam Sewell. I'm the Community Lands Director at the Low Country Land Trust. And so I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to this project.
Thank
We
you.
have.
Mr. Jones?
We've got 6.5 acres, which is about the size of Marion Square. You're going to transfer the ownership to the Hamlin Beach Community Association. This association is an LLC formed last year. I looked it up. I have no details of its financing. How is it going to finance the maintenance of this park, which I think will be quite considerable? There's no indication of funding. Who is the Hamlin Beach community? Who is supporting it? How is it going to raise funds? And then I have other questions. Is the $300,000 grant for the Conservation Bank, it's been applied for. Do we have any idea as to how successful it might be?
Yeah, okay, I'll start from the top. We do have the president of the Hamlin Beach Community Association here, who will be able to speak on behalf of that. The Hamlin Beach Community Association is the nonprofit community association that represents the Hamlin Beach settlement community. You'll find that most of the settlement communities in Charleston County have community associations that are representative of their community. We've done projects with these communities since starting in 2010 with the Phillips Community Association. So this project model is well established and one that Low Country Land Trust and previously East Cooper Land Trust has trodden this path for sure. As Chris mentioned, this will be the situation in which the Low Country Land Trust will retain ownership for an interim period as we get the park underway and as we oversee and kind of help with the administrative side. So this is the project model that we do is kind of a buy, protect, support, transfer. So we've purchased the land, protected with a conservation easement. We provide support to the Low Country Land Trust to the community associations to ensure that we are realizing the goal of the grant, and then we transfer the property to them to maintain that. So we have, we're doing this with the Beefield community as well, which is a Greenbelt funded project, Red Top, Phillips community. So we've done this a number of times. As in terms of the park site itself, and the access to that, the drainage. So there's streams, that's drainage. So the pond is a brackish water pond. It's fed by tidally influenced. So that the one that's coming down past the gazebo, a little bit south of the gazebo, that goes under Hamlin Beach Road and feeds into Hamlin Sound. So there is direct connectivity to the Hamlin Sound. So that from a water quality aspect and from an ecological aspect, there is that direct connectivity. It goes under the road. There's a culvert that water comes in through. And so that pond was dug by the community in the 70s both as a flood resiliency as well as for crabbing and aquaculture. So there's a lot of ties to the history and the culture of the community to that land and to that aspect. As most of the land in the early 1900s in this area, a lot of the freshwater wetlands, the drainages that run parallel to the coast were cleared for farming and ditched. And so those streams that you see there are previously ditched freshwater wetlands that still provide a significant amount of drainage and ecological value as well. And I'm think.
Conservation Bank application?
Yes, yeah. So we've met with South Carolina Conservation Bank staff on Friday at the site. We'll be submitting an application in the April round. This is kind of how by most of the time when we apply for dual funding, that funding hasn't been approved by the bank, but by the time we're in front of this board. So it's pretty on par with how most of our projects, do or go. Obviously, if the funding is not secured to the bank, that's no hair off the back of.
I couldn't understand.
If the funding is not approved by the bank, it would not impact. We would not be taking the money from the Greenbelt and spending it without
Find it
that
from
funding.
somewhere else.
Yeah, we'd find it from somewhere else.
So we
Yeah.
can go ahead regardless.
Well, all I'm saying is that it would have no impact on the funding from the Greenbelt. The money would either be found somewhere else or the money would be reallocated back to Greenbelt. We wouldn't just spend it and, we wouldn't, yeah, so.
Keep going. Yeah.
I don't have a great memory, and I'm not going to thump the table, but I think our experience hasn't been perfect. If I rethink the Snowdon allocation, which was made more than a decade ago, I think there were some issues there, similar situation to this, where they took a long time. In fact, I don't know whether they're in compliance now, but there was a time, which is a long time, where they didn't do anything at all. So there has been some history of not doing the thing. And I don't know how much it would cost to run a 6-acre park like this. I should imagine it would be in the hundreds of thousands. I don't know if anybody here has an opinion, perhaps from the city, but I don't think I could just dismiss it and say, oh, the society will be able to fund it. I don't know. I'd like to hear evidence that the society or the Hamlin Beach Society could fund this and the ongoing. It's not. You say it's an LLC. It's an LLC now. There's no indication of the non-profit nature. Maybe that's just a matter of application. Maybe it's been made, but it's not there. At least not on GuideStar, who deals with these things. Do you have any idea what it would cost to run this park?
I do not. I would, obviously, I don't have the numbers of the long-term maintenance of a park of this nature. We do have, like I said, these projects have been done before, and they have been successful before, and we are currently in the process of working on similar projects that the Greenbelt has already funded of this exact nature. And so I think the precedent has been set that these can be successful projects. I think the Phillips Community Park is a fantastic example that is completely maintained and managed by the community. It's a very well taken care of park, in my opinion, and the improvements and the goals that they have set forth are being achieved. So I do think that a precedent has been set that these can be successful projects. And that is where the aspect where the Low Country Land Trust through our community lands program that's the support aspect. We are going to make sure that this is successful. We are taking that responsibility as a partner to the community and a partner to Greenbelt. I think we're arguably one of y'all's most utilized organizations. I think we're a trustworthy organization. I think we've demonstrated our success throughout our history. I think we'll continue to.
Your organization is not in dispute. It's beyond that.
Well, I would say that our organization, through involving ourselves with this community, doing this project, we are signing up for a perpetual relationship with this community. So the credibility of our organization is directly tied to the success of this project. So I would say that, I would ask that be taken into consideration.
Just one final question. It's a very odd shape. It's like a box being unfolded, and all the flaps and whatever. I don't know what an optimal shape should be for a park, but that doesn't look like it. Would you consider selling part of it or acquiring land? You've got houses right up the middle of it.
Certainly. I mean, this is a core area within the section between Hamlin Beach Road and Atlanta Drive, as well as Boston Grove Road on the northern side. And so it was important that we target these properties specifically. There's 3 siblings. The property is for sale. Developers, as we know, are swarming in these communities. And so certainly there would be hopefully, goals for future expansion, but there wouldn't be any hope for a future expansion if we don't acquire this now. It's kind of a now or never type situation, as is with most of the urban unincorporated areas. It's the shape of the lots. I think with the long lots, and the flag lot shapes, that is typical of settlement communities, of their development patterns and of their, while it might seem atypical, it's actually not too, not too unnormal, if you will, for these communities.
If I could. Couple things. The shape came up in the subcommittee too, and the concerns around houses being kind of in the middle of the park, so to speak. And then the biggest concern is just the money. We don't know quite how to pay for it, and as an advisory board, we don't really know where to take it from here necessarily with regard to how to pay for it. I think I speak for everybody here that it'd be fantastic if every settlement community had a fantastic park. And however, how to pay for it is the big question, and that's going to go to council. So this is almost like a council thing. Have you spoken to council about this project? Anybody on council? And do you have any sense of whether or not, if we rejected it, if you could take it to council and get it passed that way, which is how it's going to end up going almost regardless?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, I was waiting to understand the feelings of the Greenbelt before I broached that with council members. Obviously, several council members are invested in this community and interested in the progress of this community. So there has been conversations on the preservation of Hamlin Beach community, but not the specific project. I haven't broached that. Because, I was waiting to kind of see how everything fell out before I progressed with that.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Can you explain to us what happens? You made the statement, and I know this is true, that you'll have oversight and ownership of the property until the project shows success. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it is then turned over to this group. Mm-hmm. What happens along that line if there is no success, or success is stretched out for a longer period of time? What is your plan with that?
Yeah, that's certainly a great question. There's already community use on the property, so we will, even if Low Country Land Trust retains ownership of it, that community use will continue through the Coakley Chapel as a community center. It is still used for community gathering space. The takeout strategy, if the Hamlin Beach Community Association is not the right takeout, that would have to be a reassessment. Because I hate to be, too confident, but it's kind of one of those things where we're kind of going to make sure it happens in a way. So, for example, with the Beefield community, when I talk about support aspect, that was a community association very similar to in terms of setup to the Hamlin Beach Community Association, where there were several administrative aspects that needed to be taken care of. So, for example, the Low Country Land Trust, we connected the community with the South Carolina Association for Community Economic Development. They are serving as a fiscal sponsor to the community. So all of their finances are run through SCASID, all their IRS, all the reporting, everything that entails that. We've also secured over $150,000 of grant funding for the development of that project, of that park. Obviously, with the minor improvement funds here, those are reimbursement costs, and so we would also help, so it's $100,000 that's reimbursable to the contractors that do the work. And so Low Country Land Trust would work on identifying contractors, to handle the work on the ground and handling that kind of flow of money. And so the goal is by the time the trails have been developed, the pavilion's been built, You know, the pond's been, restoration's been done to the pond with the flow on the property, and park will be ready to go, as well as the Hamlin Beach Community Association will be in an administrative place to take on the ownership of that park and manage it in a successful manner. And these are multiple year projects. The acquisition is the first phase of the projects.
Nora?
Could you describe the fundraising aspect of this project? And how long do you think it will take you to, get the money?
Yeah, so there's obviously the fundraising behind the community association, which is separate. I will say the landowner has already made a verbal commitment of $20,000 to the community association from their purchase, from the money they get from the purchase of putting $20,000 back on top of the $85,000 donated that they've put to the property or to the project. Fundraising standpoint, we as from the Low Country Land Trust side, we focus more on grants and small grants. For example, we're working on some grants right now with the South Carolina Parks and Recreation and Tourism for trails. We've secured grant funding for other projects through private funding sources like the Conservation Alliance that do park development. And so that would be more where our fundraising would be focused on, was providing grant writing support and access to that expertise and knowledge.
Any other questions or thoughts, or perhaps a motion? Yeah, Christiane.
I know there's a lot of discussion about the development of the park, the future of a park there, but I guess that was used as part of their match, presented as part of their match for the development of the park. But looking at it, there's value in the preservation of the land alone. And I think there's a lot of pressure in this particular area that probably should be the first priority here, is the preservation. Whether or if they are able to achieve the park in the future, obviously is a second consideration. I do think that there have been some other communities, and you referenced the Phillips community, Sam, is one that has been successful in taking some of this land and creating a park. And it took some time, though, to get to that point, and I think that would probably be the same here. But the initial preservation of the land, I think, is the most critical thing because of the pressures that there are in the Hamlin community right now. It is an odd shape, and I think, but Sam is absolutely correct too. That is the development patterns that exist kind of in these communities, and so we're not going to necessarily end up with a nice little square, just because of the way the land was traditionally subdivided. So I think that my biggest struggle with this is the funding question. And I think that's probably a larger discussion that we need to have as a group, or county council needs to have, especially as it comes to the urban unincorporated areas. We've got a long way to go in this program, and there's only, if this is approved, there's only $1 million left. And that's, I don't think, going to be enough to provide the protections that are going to be needed in some of the urban incorporated areas. But, I've repeated myself a couple of times. I think initially, though, that there is value to trying to get some preservation of some properties in the Hamlin community. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Adam?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Didn't you have one?
I'll pass.
Okay.
So just to key in on the funding aspect. So, and this might be a question to Eric and Chris / all of us, but so, once again, if this project is approved, there's just over $1 million for the next 18 years as the program currently, sits. Whereas, say, someone like, the rural funds category has $84 million. I'm not suggesting we just, deplete that, but is there a larger conversation, once again, that we need to have to talk about, the reallocation of some of these funds, perhaps, just because of this? Like, I don't have any issues with the project itself. I think the project is good, but I don't know that I could support the funding of it, knowing that there's only $1 million left for the next 18 years. So what can we do to kind of help ourselves get out of this situation? Eric and Chris, I don't know, do you guys, I'm sure you've thought about this over the past couple of years as the funds have been depleted, and is there something we can do to kind of help this situation so we don't find ourselves in this situation for the next 18 years?
Yeah, we did have quite a few discussions on this back in 2023 during our 5-year review. That may have been just before your start on the GAB. Ultimately, the decision at that point in time was to make no recommendation to county council on the issue. And really, Urban Unincorporated Small Landowner Program, really, most of those funds are now going towards the same type projects in these settlement communities. At that time, you said we're just going to take it project by project. So, of course, you could take that back up and make a recommendation to council at any time on how funding should be redistributed for these types of projects.
And that would come up at the year end when we look at the mapping, the thing we talked about at the beginning. That would be a logical time to talk about all this relative to mapping and strategy and being more strategic on acquisition. Don't you think, Eric?
I think you'd probably have more data to kind of support your recommendation at that point.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Mr. Jones?
Yeah, this is way out, I suppose, but I wonder what would be lost if we deferred it and thought about it a little more, or perhaps tweaked it in that, unless you're blind and you're not aware of what's going on in the real world at the moment, interest rates rising, uncertainty. I don't think this property is going to be developed by a developer and housing put on it in the immediate future, given the current situation. So I don't think that anything is going to be lost by waiting. My opinion.
Okay. Do you have a thought? Rita? Oh, excuse me. Okay. Can we add someone for public comments?
That's fully your decision, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Would you like to come speak? And please tell us your name and where you're from.
Good day. My name is Myra Snipe Richardson. My address is 2755 Earl Johnson Lane. I'm the president of the Hamlin Beach Community Association. I attended Mount Pleasant town meeting yesterday evening. There's a lot that's not too far from this lot that's a 3.11 acre lot that they're annexing out of the historic district into the town of Mount Pleasant. So this project, this parcel is very close to that, and as they connect these lots, this lot will actually can be developed. I've lived in Mount Pleasant for over 50 years. I've seen where they're folding the ponds to build grocery stores, town center, and also a pond that's triple the size of the Hamlin Coakley Chapel pond that they put townhouses on. So the property can be developed because I've seen where they've allowed these things to happen. The 3-acre lot is going to be clear cut. 3 oak trees will be left. So it's so very important that we protect this lot because Mount Pleasant is actually annexing our parcels out of Charleston County, out of the historic district, into the town of Mount Pleasant for major developments. We have a moratorium. Mount Pleasant does not have a moratorium. They were able to build those 8 lots once they annexed. The first reading was last night, and they're continuing to do it because they said we are using Mount Pleasant resources. So therefore, they need these properties annexed into Mount Pleasant once they touch Mount Pleasant. So we're protecting the historic district, we're protecting Charleston County property because everything is going to be clear cut. And like I said, I've lived in Charleston and Mount Pleasant for over 50 years. I've seen where they fold in 4 ponds to build things on top of it. So it's so very important to our community and not just the community members. Just for the green space alone, it's the protection of the property, the wildlife habitat. We are so grateful for the Coakley family for giving us the opportunity, the first right to this property, but it is for sale. It is up for sale, and the developer that's developing that 3-acre lot already clear-cut a lot that's on 1573 Boston Grove Road that will touch the lot that's on 2790 Hamlin Beach Road. So they will be annexing that next lot into the town of Mount Pleasant. They've also asked the homeowners to buy their backyards to continue the expansion over, and those lots get them very close to this 6-acre tract. So they're working their way towards the 6-acre tract as we speak. So that's why we're asking you to please preserve and protect what we have, because we've seen where they have been destroyed just simply to drop houses on it, and no care consideration with filling in, with backfilling, and flooding us out. And that's our major issue in this area, being flooded out, because that's what's happening with the other 2 lots that are very close to this lot. So we're asking you to please protect this space. When we were on the property the other day with the children from the University of Richmond, 17 children came out, students came out, along with the community members, and we walked the park, we cleaned up everything that was there that was probably there since Hurricane Hugo. And as we were there, the geese were in there just making all this noise. I have a beautiful video of them on the pond, and as we got close enough, they took flight. That's what we're trying to protect. A gentleman said to me one day, he told me to look at the trees. I looked over there, and I said, okay, I see trees. He said, no, look again. I looked again. He said, what do you see? Green trees, different shades of green, different height, different shape. If we don't protect this park and other green spaces, when we look over there, we're only going to see houses. That's what we're asking to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Come on up. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Thank you. I'm David Ray. I'm the Chief Conservation Officer with Low Country Land Trust, and I just wanted to follow up with a few points to address some of the things that have been raised, so thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. First of all, I just wanted to say I did look on the Secretary of State's website, and you're right, Mr. Jones, that there is an LLC called Hamlin Beach, but there's also listed a nonprofit called Hamlin Beach Community, and that's who we would be working with. So I just want to make sure that it's clear there is a nonprofit. I very much understand the thinking and concern about the forward spending on urban unincorporated. One thing, though, that I wanted to raise is that if we don't spend the money now, the question is, what would we spend it on? There's only going to be less of this land in the future, and it's going to keep getting more and more expensive. And if we show that there's a need for this funding, that is a signal that through some form or fashion, more of this kind of funding is needed in the future. And so I think what we have here is a window of opportunity. That's what we call it when we have a landowner who's willing to work with us, whether there is or isn't a threat of development that's so obvious. It's a window of opportunity that can be lost. And my concern is that we would lose this opportunity on this property. There are going to be probably some people suffering financially in the coming months, but there's also going to be people who are doing just fine and looking to speculate on the future. And so I do think there's a risk of this property being taken out of the hands of a community member who's willing to work with the community to preserve this land. And so the question is, why this land? Obviously, there's some odd pieces to the shape of it. We've talked about that. I think, Ms. Farrell, your comments were right on about why those shapes exist. The why of this property, though, this is not just any place in this community. This is not just any place in all of the settlement communities. This is a place that is extremely important to this community, a place that they can rally around. This is where they did rally for decades to worship together, to meet together about things that were important, to come together in the wake of Hurricane Hugo to figure out what to do to repair their community. And they're still doing it. They're bringing children in the community to this place to talk about their heritage. I've lived in a community where there was a park in the middle of the community that was abandoned, and the community wanted to take charge of it themselves. That community has become one of the most thriving communities in a place I used to live up in Asheville, North Carolina. People are dying to go there and want to live there, and one of the reasons is because this community wanted to take charge of this piece of land in the middle of it and make something of it, and that in turn cause the community to continue to thrive. I think that's the opportunity that we have here. We have an energized community with energized leaders, elders who are bringing children to this place to care for it themselves. And so I think it's a fantastic opportunity for that to happen, and I would hate for the opportunity to be foreclosed. And we do need to ultimately get to this question of how to spend forward. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to it.
Thank you, David. Okay. Any thoughts, questions, perhaps a motion? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please come here and let us know who you are and where you're from.
My name is Richard Hampshire. I'm the president of the Phillips Community Association. And you heard mentioned about the Phillips and project. But what Sam don't know, that wasn't our first choice of property. Our first choice was on the creek, or Hallback Creek. Now you got Hallback Creek subdivision over there. So, you know, it's like to say that the property is the value of the community. It's what's there. If you lose it, that'll be it. And also maintaining our property. It don't cost that much. Once we got it sort of cleared off and manicured, you know, it takes about $5,000 a year just to maintain it, cut the grass, do some odds and ends to it. It's not a whole lot of money once you do it. So it's not saying that you need all this money to maintain it, but you do need that property because it's a part of the community. Like I said earlier, our property was not the first option. It was where Phillip Creek is at. And in that big subdivision, you know where our problem comes at now? In Phillip Creek because of that development in the community. So Hamlin needs the property to maintain Hamlin community. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, or perhaps a motion? It's all very compelling.
I'll make a motion to approve and to allow forward spending in this case. And then I would like to, if there's a second on that, make a motion that we have consideration maybe at one of our next meetings to talk more about the funding situation.
Okay, we have a second. So we have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Jones.
I'll support the motion, but I think I would make the comment, my reason for the support is that the Low Country Land Trust is a very large and honourable organisation, and they've sort of committed to this and to see it through properly, and I think I would take them at their word and support this application and the motion.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Would there need to be a motion to talk further about the funding at a future?
Well, it is going to come up at the end of the year when we do the whole thing, but we
Okay.
could,
Well, whatever the preference is, but
I mean, I can make sure it's on the agenda. I can say
Next
right now.
meeting, we'll give you a refresher kind of
Yeah.
on where we left off last time and what the options would be.
And then we'll also have more data. Well, next meeting would have the mapping and all that ready?
No, I was thinking there'd probably be a meeting before, closer to the end of the year.
Okay.
You know, sometime later this spring or summer.
Well, we can talk about it at both, probably. Okay. Thank you. What's next, Chris?
Okay. So next, we have Tom Austin here with Edisto Island Open Land Trust to provide you all with an update on all the projects that they've owned and managed that have received Greenbelt funding.
Morning, y'all. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about our land trust here today. We are Edisto Island's local land trust. We're also the local land trust for Young's Island, Megget, Adams Run, the whole southern end of Charleston County. I think the most appropriate place to start is with our origins. Back in the mid-1980s, a Hilton Head-style resort was proposed right on the South Edisto River in the middle of Edisto Island. Golf course, condos, marinas, you name it, right there in the middle of Edisto Island. And I dare say that this was the watershed moment for all of low-country land conservation. This development was eventually stopped. The 1,000-acre Prospect Hill property that underlaid it was protected, and this was the genesis of the Ace Basin project in and of itself. This Prospect Hill property that was protected was the prototype project that then formed the basis for all the collaborative conservation landscape scale efforts that have taken place in the Ace Basin and throughout the Low Country ever since. But the Ace Basin wasn't the only thing that this development threat catalyzed. It also catalyzed our land trust, because we'd taken our rural agricultural community on Edisto Island for granted up until this point. And we were spared not by the grit and determination of Edistonians, but through outside help. National level conservation organizations, regional advocacy groups, state, federal, and local government, as well as a few ambitious and determined private landowners upriver from us with the help of the Edisto Island community, stopped this development. And this motivated a grassroots effort on Edisto Island to get zoning in place on Edisto Island. That was initially done in 1985 and again finalized in 1993. But our founders realized that getting zoning in place on Edisto Island was just the first line of defense. If Edistonians wanted to see Edisto protected, we were going to have to roll up our sleeves, get our hands dirty, and get dirt on the ground into conservation and see that land protected. And so in 1994, the Edisto Island Open Land Trust was founded by Edistonians for the sake of Edisto. And our mission today is to preserve the rural quality of life on Edisto Island by protecting our lands, our waterways, our scenic vistas, and our heritage through conservation and through education. That's a mission that we carry forward with every project that we bring in front of y'all. We carry forward day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year after year. This is our 30th anniversary this year, and this mission still is strong. It's still the driving force behind all the work that we do on Edisto Island. We work primarily on Edisto Island. I would be remiss not to mention the fact that Edisto Island is over 50% protected today, 51.9% to be precise. But we don't just work on Edisto Island. We've been working in Megget for the last 20 years. We have a focus on Willtown and Adams Run as well, Parkers Ferry, Hollywood, Ravenel, the whole western, southern end of Charleston County. We also wouldn't turn away a landowner in need in a good project in eastern Colleton County or southwestern Dorchester County either. Off of Edisto Island, our conservation priorities are similar to any other land trust in the state. We're looking at creating conservation connections between existing protected lands. We're looking to work with generational landowners to help keep good stewardship on the ground and in place, help protect family farms, help protect working forests where they still exist within our focus area. We're looking to protect habitat for imperiled wildlife species, conserve healthy wetland ecosystems, and where possible, buffer and expand public lands for the benefit of all South Carolina and Charleston residents. But on Edisto Island, we do all of that with even more intensity, but we also put an emphasis on protecting our scenic views, conserving our grand trees, the landmarks that define our landscape, the historic features of Edisto Island, the waterways that flow to and through all of these upland areas, and we even create pocket parks where we have the opportunity. And every acre, every single peck of dirt on Edisto Island is a priority for us in some capacity. But it's more than just the dirt on Edisto Island that we care about. We're working to enhance water quality across the island. We're facilitating scientific research in all aspects on Edisto Island. We're protecting cultural resources where they exist, and we're even dabbling and assisting in historic preservation. We also put a keen emphasis on conserving the aesthetic beauty, the rural character, and the traditional land uses of Edisto Island. But we're also aware that we need to allow for the community to still have access to these natural resources, to still apply these traditional land uses, to still express the culture that defines our community on Edisto Island. It doesn't end there, because we also educate the next generation, both the young growing up on Edisto Island as well as new homeowners moving to Edisto Island, so that they know about the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into protecting 50% of Edisto Island, the work that has gone in, and why that work is important and why that work needs to be carried forward and preserved so that we can no longer take Edisto Island for granted. We protect everything that is Edisto for the sake of all that is Edisto. So far, we've had 28 successful Greenbelt funded applications. 27 of those are closed. One is in the process of closing, and the 29th was in front of y'all today. The projects that you see up here with asterisks next to them, I'm going to cover in a little bit more detail, because I think they're indicative of the larger landscape scale and community conservation work that we do on Edisto Island. And I also wanted to point out that in the first sales tax, we only had one fee simple land acquisition project at the very tail end in 2014. During the second sales tax from 2019 further, we've had 5 fee simple land acquisitions, and that's becoming more of the norm here in the conservation landscape, not just on Edisto Island, but in the Low Country. Land trusts buying land in order to be able to protect important conservation parcels in the landscape is becoming more and more prevalent. And looking at the types of conservation projects we work on, we of course have fee simple lands and conservation easements. You all know the difference between those. I won't dwell on that. But in the fee simple land side of things, we have 3 kind of primary buckets that our projects fall into. We have scenic buffer projects, where the primary goal of that acquisition is to protect some scenic viewshed, some aesthetic character of that property that has larger outward public benefit than just the size of that land itself. For us, that's primarily protecting lands along the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway, which runs from the Dahoo River all the way down to the causeway onto Edisto Beach, but also viewsheds from public waterways, from public boat landings, from places where conserving the landscape surrounding a public space creates a much larger benefit that it doesn't just require someone visit the property, but anyone passing by, anyone enjoying that larger public space can see and appreciate. Our pocket park projects are direct public access properties where we are allowing the public to utilize natural resources or experience cultural resources on a property directly. There's some value to that property that we feel is important for the public to be able to get out there and experience. And then we have preserve properties where the primary intent is either conserving some important ecosystem, some imperiled wildlife habitat, or some specific historic or cultural resource found on that property where it's not necessarily of the largest viewshed or scenic value to the public. It may not be appropriate to allow full public access, but there's something intrinsic about that piece of property that needs to be protected. These tend to be our larger properties. We tend not to bring these forward to Greenbelt very often. Most of what we're doing that's funded by Greenbelt are our pocket parks as well as our scenic buffers. But on the conservation easement side of things, about half of our conservation easements historically are donated. These days, it's about 1/3 of our active projects are donated conservation easements that don't come before y'all. But bargain sales have been transformational in our ability to do conservation work on Edisto Island. The 50% protection of Edisto Island would not have been possible without the funding that Greenbelt provides for bargain sale conservation easements. These allow us to be way more efficient with funding, way more nimble, and we're able to protect much more land for much fewer dollars all across Edisto Island. And something I think needs to be highlighted is the fact that this has really democratized conservation easements in Charleston County. This allows us to work with any willing landowner who has a piece of property, who wants to see that land be protected, and they walk through our door and want to do the right thing. We can help them through the funding of the Greenbelt program. It allows us to work with any landowner, any size acreage, any financial situation, help protect their land and do the right thing for the public good, for the public benefit. And that for me is something that's really important. My own family's farm is protected with conservation easements on Edisto Island held by our land trust. This is why doing this land conservation work is so important to me, why I carry this passion forward with my work every day here at the Edisto Island Open Land Trust. But as the years have gone by, donated and bargain sale easements have becoming less and less common, and the buy, protect, sell model of land conservation is becoming more prevalent here in Charleston County, and I feel it's going to become more prevalent going forward with this hyperactive real estate market that we have. In order for land trusts to be able to compete in the real estate space, in order to protect valuable land for wildlife habitat, for community conservation, for public benefit as those lands come up for sale on the open market. And with the buy, protect, sell model, it doesn't have to be strictly buy, protect, sell. The important part is the protect thing in the middle. This is where a land trust is buying property off the open market, putting some sort of conservation protection on it, and transferring its ownership to another entity, whether it's buying or donating on the front end, or transferring, leasing, or selling it on the back end. But the land trust is acting as an intermediary to get conservation in place on an at-risk property and then get that into the hands of a landowner who's either going to be a good conservation steward, into a local nonprofit that can manage that property, or into the hands of DNR, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, something like that, that can manage it for the public's benefit. And with that, I want to cover 7 projects that I think exemplify the work that we do on Edisto Island and the community conservation work that we strive to do across the island. First is my family's farm. Keefe and Pope Farm conservation easements underlie the farmland where my family's farm, King's Farm Market, leases and operates their farm. My family would not have the opportunity to have this farm without the funding of the Greenbelt program. That's why this is so important to me and why I carry that forward with me every day in my work. This is 2 conservation easements protecting 140 acres of active farmland. This is one of the only vegetable farms left on Edisto Island. It provides fresh local produce to the whole of the Edisto Island community, while at the same time also protecting water quality, also protecting scenic views along. This has about a half mile on the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway. It's a local landmark. It has tremendous views on the public waterways of Milton Creek. It's a very important property to the appearance, to the aesthetics of what Edisto Island is and how it's viewed by the public. Right next door to Keefe Farm is the Keefe Kinlaw Scenic Buffer. This is a small 1.2 acre property that we purchased with Greenbelt funding specifically to protect the scenic value that it provides to the community. But additionally, it connected 3 existing conservation easements together through one continuous conservation corridor. It protects a wetland confluence and a major drainage system that flows between this, protecting the neighborhoods upstream of this from flooding by making sure that this drainage in these natural wetlands stay open and can flow and aren't damaged by any sort of development. It buffers that existing farmland from adverse local use or adverse adjacent uses, and it conserves water quality through the protection of those wetlands. It's a small lot that has a tremendous larger outward public benefit, even though it's only 1.2 acres. And it protects one of the few remaining live oak tunnels down the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway. Down towards Botany Bay Heritage Preserve, we have our Britton family's cotton conservation easement. This is a 48-acre conservation easement that's contiguous with Botany Bay Wildlife Management Area / Heritage Preserve. And it conserves 1/4 of one side of the live oak alley running down the public road to Botany Bay, one of the most iconic landscapes on Edisto Island in all of Charleston County, in my opinion. But not only does it protect that public viewshed, not only does it buffer those adjacent public lands, but it connects that wildlife habitat, those wetlands that flow between these properties, and creates one larger block of conservation. On the north end of the island, we have our Legacy Live Oak Memorial Park. This is a 29.3 acre public pocket park. Only about 15 acres is actually upland. The rest is all marshlands. But this is one of our gateway properties on the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway. When you land off of the big bridge, you're coming down Highway 174 and you open up into the causeway of Sand Creek and you come up over the Sand Creek Bridge. This is everything you see on the left side of the road. Everything on the right is all protected conservation easements we hold. This has a tremendous prominence on the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway, and it helps define the character of Edisto Island for anyone visiting it, anyone living there. It helps. It's such an important viewshed within the whole character of Edisto Island. But not only that, it's also conserving water quality, it's conserving existing wetlands, it's protecting habitat for imperiled species, and it hosts our Legacy Live Oak Beautification Program, which has worked for the last 20 years to restore the aesthetic character of the Edisto Island National Scenic Byway by planting live oaks in the unvegetated areas down the byway. That program's been so successful, we're now pivoting it, because we've run out of places to put trees, to building out this park and getting it on the ground so the public can access and utilize this beautiful natural space. We have our site plan submitted. It's currently underway. I'm hoping to break ground in the next couple of months. It's been a long time coming. And the Sunnyside 5 are 5 conservation easements that were all donated independently by different family members on Peters Point Road. This was a family that came together and said, we need to protect this landscape. We need to protect this neighborhood. We need to take all these historic land holdings that we have, put them under conservation easement. And this is a adjacent block of 408 protected acres through 5 conservation easements. And this exemplifies the type of landscape scale, neighborhood level conservation work that we try and get done, because each project we work on is not its own isolated project. It provides a foundation for every future project, and it expands and builds upon all other conservation work that's been done on Edisto Island beforehand. And these properties collectively together have every priority that we look for in conservation on Edisto Island. You know, they're undeveloped waterfront acreage, intact natural wetlands, natural bottomland forest and natural regenerating hardwood forest, working farmlands, working forests. There's multiple structures on the National Historic Register, irreplaceable cultural values, and it's all protected by one family through multiple conservation easements because they're all unified in one conservation ethos, one goal to see that land protected and stewarded properly forever. And just down the road, well, catty corner down on Point of Pines Road, is our Hutchinson House project. This 18-acre property contains a circa 1885 Freedman cottage that the Land Trust purchased off the open market in 2016 and has been working for the last 9 years to restore. As of this month, the whole exterior facade of the structure will be restored back to its original condition, and we eventually will open this to the public as a museum, as a community green space, and as a local hub for African American history on the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor. But we're also protecting the 18 acres underneath this project. This property has such a deep and rich history to it. Everywhere we look with this property, there is some other fascinating fact or interesting piece of the history of Edisto Island that deserves to be brought forward to the public. I mean, just the fallow fields on the property, we didn't think anything of when we purchased it, but when I went out there as an ecologist, I looked, and these are tremendous, pieces of natural pollinator habitat, beautiful wildflower meadows that I've been working for the last 7 years to keep preserved. This, we've got a Sea Island cotton project out there that's just a small piece of the interpretation and demonstration of the property, but this is such an important and impactful cash crop to the history of all of the South Carolina Lowcountry that was thought to be extinct. Through this project, we found out that the USDA's had it preserved all this time, and it's now an integral part of our interpretation at the house. It's something, being able to have people out there on the property and feel Sea Island cotton with their hands and feel the history that this land carries is just such a tremendous thing. And this is one project in the massive community conservation work that we've been doing on Edisto Island for the last 30 years. And I think the project that best exemplifies this connected collaborative work that we do within our community on the island is the Edisto Island Community Recreation Area. We've been working with the Edisto Island Youth Recreation nonprofit since 2017 to help them find and identify a piece of land where they could get active green space facilities in place for the benefit of the youth of Edisto Island and the benefit of anyone on the island who wants to do active recreation, wants some place where they can go out into a green space and better themselves and improve their health. In 2020, we were able to help them negotiate the contract to purchase this 145-acre property. We helped them with their Greenbelt application, and we were there to accept a donation of a conservation easement on that property to protect the 115 acres of this land that they did not actually need for the active recreational development. So there's 30 acres that are being set aside and actively being planned and developed for athletic fields, a gymnasium, nature trails, a full Olympic track, playground and event space, hopefully a modern community center, and maybe even eventually a Charleston County Public Library. We are hopeful that this will be a hub for the whole Edisto Island community. But at the same time, on that additional land that they didn't need for these active uses, we're protecting 75 acres of active farmland. We're conserving 30 acres of wetlands and all the wildlife habitat that provides. We're doing this while simultaneously enhancing and benefiting our community with this much-needed infrastructure. They're now partnered with Charleston County Parks and Rec. They have several $1 million of allocation from the State House, and they are moving forward with their site plans, and this is going to happen. It's going to be so amazing for our community. And real quick, the Botany Bay, Acela Creek project that y'all reviewed today, I hope to eventually connect Botany Bay through that acquisition to the Hutchinson House, which is just a quarter mile down the road from that property, to the Edisto Island Recreation Area, which is just another quarter mile down the road from that property, through a unified trail system and a unified greenway, in order to make this one mass of public space that benefits the entire community, whatever segment, whatever their values are, from historic preservation to active green space, passive green space, access to natural resources, through one large conservation project. And that's the type of community conservation work that we do on Edisto Island. That's what we strive to do. It's what we thrive when we have the opportunity to do. I'm Tom Austin. I'm the Director of Land Conservation there, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about our land trust.
Can I say something?
That's really great, Tom. Thank you very much.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah, please.
I've
Yeah.
been with you guys for a long time, being on the Greenbelt for so long, and what you have done, when you go through the A space into Edisto, it's spectacular. There's no other word to describe it, and that's due to your hard labor. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It's what we're
Very
here
glad
for.
you're on the case. Sorry? Yeah, okay.
I'm
Thank
good.
you, Tom. Yeah. Anything else for Tom? All right. I think that brings us.
I'll just mention, Tom is also now a published author.
Okay,
He has
awesome.
an excellent, I call it like a coffee table style book with all different flora and fauna from Edisto Island. So highly recommend you check that out. He usually has a box of them in his car when he travels around. So see Tom about that.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So we don't really have a reason to have a meeting in May, but do you guys want to weigh in on having a periodic meeting for updates, or would you prefer to wait until the natural cycle brings a meeting around? Any comment on that?
We don't have anything pressing right now other than, the discussion on forward spending, small landowner, urban unincorporated. By June, we may have a few items that are becoming ripe for recommendations from the GAB, like a transfer of a conservation easement, maybe one or two other smaller items.
Necessarily mean a sense of urgency with it, but, probably I don't feel a need to have the discussion as soon as May.
Okay.
Well, I think the question is, do we want to try and address it before the next cycle of projects, or do we want to wait closer towards the end of the year to have all the data in front of us?
I would motion for having the data myself, but what do you think?
I think we'll have a need for another meeting prior to your next meeting specifically to look at projects, so we could certainly bring in another group to present on their work, just as Low Country and Edisto have recently done. So how about tentatively target June 14th, and if we have enough agenda items to warrant a meeting, we'll go forward with that?
Sure, if they're enough, yeah.
And we'll coordinate that with you, Mr. Chairman.
Does that sound good? Okay. And then I'm sorry, real quick, Chris, will you give us 30 to 60 second bio? You have an interesting background, just so we're all aware.
Sure. So like Eric over here, I have a Parks and Recreation background. I also have a degree in history. So I worked with San Diego County Parks and Recreation for over a decade out west. Moved the family out east about 4 years ago. I started with the Planning and Zoning Department initially as an arborist enforcing the tree protection and preservation ordinance. And then I transferred over to Greenbelt and continued my preservation work here. So that's my story. I'm excited to take on the additional responsibilities. It's a lot to learn, but we'll get through it.
Really good, really good. Glad you're here, man. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts? No? Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Don't forget photos. Walk out this door and go down the hallway that says EMS, and we'll be directing you into the studio on the left. We'll catch up with Mr. Charlie some other time.
Very nice to have you, man.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is great.
Good. Yeah, I like this. This is.
Oh, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're well qualified, which is
Well,
super nice to have.
Catching up on Hayes, today was a good meeting, got to catch up on how to do things.
Yeah, you saw a couple of interesting
Got some good comments.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking that Summer Park was going to go when I walked in.